Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video we're taking a look at an extremely powerful Fantasy Cup team featuring some very unexpected movesets. Now this team was not created by me, it was actually created by a fellow streamer, SS Thorn, who will be competing at the World Championships. The team starts with a very standard Pokémon, Skarmory, but here's where things get fun. On the safe switch, Poison Jab Como-O to bait out fairy types and punish them, and as the closer, Haxorus with the nuke move of Earthquake. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and check out this powerful team that I was able to gain a ton of elo with. We hop into the first match, picking up a pretty okay lead, leading Skarmory into Giratina Origin. Giratina is often paired with steel types. That means that my Haxorus can potentially be quite strong in the back. They are going to fire off the Shadow Ball, I'm going to wait the turn, and then return fire with a charge attack of my own. I go for the Sky Attack, and the bait is successful. They're going to farm up and fire off an Ominous Wind before I'm able to make my move, and I decide I'm just going to let this go. Instead, I'm going to bring in Como-O. Opponent safe switches into Shiinotic. They see the dragon typing. They could very well be running Giratina Double Fairy in this case. They switch in Shiinotic. The Poison Jab has the Shiinotic in absolute shambles. I one shield farm down, and in the back, it is Kartana, and this is going to be a 1v3 Poison Jab Como-O sweep as they try and call the Dragon Claw bait. I have back-to-back Dragon Claws versus the Giratina. Dragon Claw number 1 gets shielded, but there's more where that came from. Poison Jab Como-O up a shield, just completely dominating an endgame, and we're able to take the win. Skarmory sees a great lead in the next match as I lead into a Escavalier. Now, Skarmory is going to be a wall to all charge moves from Escavalier. Unfortunately, the Escavalier trainer does actually lag, so they do end up missing out a counter right at the start of the game. The Sky Attack bait is called, and they're going to safe switch into Azumarill. The opponent is running a team that is ABA weak to Skarmory. Their lead, Escavalier, and Azumarill both have losing matchups, so it's a fair bet that their final Pokemon is really good into Skarmory. So I'm just going to stay in when they bring in the Azu. Force them to get rid of the Skarmory, and now that guarantees that I got some value out of the Skarmory without it being aligned against whatever they have in back, which I'm guessing could potentially be something like a Magnezone or a Turtonator, as those are the best counters to Skarmory in the format. But now I can send in the Poison Jab Como-O, get a massive farm down, and I'm just watching to see what they bring in. I don't get the fast move through because, I'll be honest, it was midnight sets, my reaction time wasn't amazing. I meant to just go for the Poison Jab there, but unfortunately, I clicked it too late, so I didn't get the fast move through. I'm going to fire off back-to-back Dragon Claws, they shield one, let one go, and in the back, as expected, it is the Turtonator. And this is just a win for me. I have stored energy everywhere. I make it to the Breaking Swipe that forces the shield. I don't get the debuff, but if they try and farm to 100, I'm going to make it to another Breaking Swipe. That's just going to KO. And it turns out I don't even need the Dragon Claw that I had stored on Como-O. Bad lead in the next match, Skarmory versus Empoleon. Most Empoleon lead teams do not have a good answer to a Haxorus safe switch, as a lot of them have dragons in the back of their own. So I just switch in the Haxorus right away. I did test it out with a couple different playstyles. Some games I would stay in, try and force a shield with a Brave Bird and then go Como-O. But those games, honestly, I didn't have amazing results with. I found the most consistent strategy is just to go straight into Haxorus. Even if they have something like the Giratina, you still have tremendous play with the super effective Breaking Swipes. They're going to undercharge a Dragon Claw, and unfortunately for them, they undercharge it too much. I'm able to make it to the Breaking Swipe, and I win switch advantage with a shield intact as well. The Empoleon is going to get a farm down, which is quite uncomfortable as Empoleon's energy is very good against my team. They farm up a ton of energy with the Empoleon. I'm going to commit the shield as they'll fire off the Drill Peck. The Drill Peck will be shielded. I wait the turn to make sure they can't catch, and I get to connect with the Close Combat. Close Combat KOs Empoleon in the back. It is Gabite. Gabite, a Pokemon I have not really seen much this time around. I know it has Mudshot, Dig, and as it turns out, it has Flamethrower as well. I'm going to make it to the Brave Bird. I lose Charge Attack priority, but they do not have 2 moves loaded, and I have the Dragon Claw loaded on my Como-O. I bring it back in, and the opponent will resign the match. We've got the worst case lead, Skarmory versus Shadow Magnezone. 1 Steel Wing and a switch to Como-O. Opponent is going to bank a Wild Charge and send in Togetic. This is not great. I'm going to farm up and bluff like I have Flamethrower or Boom Burst, so I farm up a bunch of energy, and they actually shield. Okay, so not only did I get to bait out the Togetic, which would have completely shut down my Haxorus, but I'm actually able to get a shield as my opponent covers for me having a move that I am not running. This is going to set up a massive Skarmory farm down. That's why I intentionally didn't throw the second Dragon Claw, because I want as much farm as I can possibly get. Because even though my energy is double resisted versus the Magnezone, Brave Bird is still Brave Bird. They're now on 4 Volt switches. I'm going to Brave Bird, switch to the Haxorus, and they're firing off a move. I commit the shield thinking they're going to Wild Charge. If they do, the counter KOs, but they Mirror Shot. It's Azu in the back, and I've just lost this game. Oh, that is so unfortunate. I have just lost this game because I covered for the fact that I was expecting them to Wild Charge, and they didn't. Here, I'm actually going to throw a Breaking Swipe on Charge Attack Priority when they get to 100 energy, and my opponent is not familiar with the Haxorus counts, and they actually commit the shield. Committing the shield might let me back into this game. I bring in the Skarmory, they're going for the Ice Beam, but I make a pretty massive misplay. In the moment, I was thinking that they only had a Mirror Shot banked, but they do in fact have a Wild Charge banked back there. So what I had to do was just no shield the Ice Beam, and then I would have been in a position where I could have just Steel Winged down and taken the win, but unfortunately, they have the Wild Charge. I had multiple win cons in that game after a Nightmare lead, but unfortunately, I was just not able to execute. We've got a bit of a surprising lead here. The Skarmory versus Ferrothorn. Haven't seen a lot of Ferrothorn. I'm going to throw 7 Steel Wings and catch what should be a Thunder onto Como-O, and it is. That's a massive catch. Out comes Flygon. Unfortunately, my Poison Jab doesn't do much for me here, but overall, I'm still able to output some nice pressure. Opponent shields the Dragon Claw, which is a huge surprise to me, because the Flygon can't do anything against the Skarmory, so to me, the Flygon is useless, and that move shouldn't really be shielded. I'm going to send in the Skarmory. They can fire off the Scorching Sands, but look at this. This just does nothing to the Skarmory, and it's part of why Skarmory almost feels like a little bit of a necessary evil in this cup, just because Flygon's energy is so incredibly effective into just about everything else, but against Skarmory, you just completely shut it down. If they're going to make the last second Dragon Claw, in comes Ferrothorn, and I'm full sending the Brave Bird. I want some damage on this Pokemon. The Brave Bird will be shielded up. I'm going to switch into Haxorus. Opponent is going to farm up a lot of energy. Even a Power Whip would do a lot of damage to Haxorus. It is a Haxorus after all. It's very frail. In comes a Azumarill as the final Pokemon, and here's where Earthquake is incredibly clutch for the Haxorus. Look how much damage this does to an Azumarill. Like, that does a lot. So if you are up a shield as the Haxorus, you can put in a nice amount of work. So I will commit the shield. Opponent is running Play Rough and Hydro Pump. This means I can overfarm a nice amount and then go for another Earthquake. Earthquake is going to be able to pick up the knockout. Down goes the Azumarill. I switch into the Skarmory to force them to Thunder. They keep farming, trying to get to 100, but that just lets me make it to a Brave Bird, knock out the Ferrothorn, and take the win. Alright, hopping into the next match, Skarmory versus Shadow Alolan Sandslash, another uncomfortable lead. So versus the Alolan Sandslash, typically you're going to be able to play out the Zero Shield. The opponent is going to be farming up to the back-to-back Ice Punches, and I'm going to CMP tie here. Brave Bird would do a lot. I end up going for Sky Attack because I don't really want to give my opponent a ton of farm, so I go for the Sky Attack. They will commit the shield. My opponent is going to farm up here, and then just fire off their energy. At this point, what I should do is bring in the Haxorus, get the 2 counters, let the Ice Punch go, and trust in 2-shield Como-O. But as you're going to see, this was one of my earlier battles with the team. I make the mistake of shielding the Haxorus, and that's actually going to cost me this game, because Como-O up shields can do very well against the Azumarill, but now I'm in a situation where I traded a shield for not a lot of energy, and I'm in quite a bit of trouble. So they're going to go for the Ice Beam. They're going to be able to pick up the knockout. I can bring in the Como-O. They can force the final shield, and down a shield, Como-O is in a bit of an uncomfortable spot, as it is going to be Giratina. So potentially, if I had 2 shields available on the Como-O, this endgame would be a winning one. But unfortunately, it is not, and that is a very valuable lesson that I learned from an early game with the team. Alright, we get to run it back now. The Sandslash lead, and I'm going to be leading the Skarmory once again. They're going to save switch into a Turtonator, so they end up switching out. This is great for me. I'm going to Brave Bird, that does a ton of damage, and bring in Como-O, and I'm just going to shield once, and then I'm going to Poison Jab all the way down. Them switching out is nice, because this means that I do get to realign the Sand Slash onto the Haxorus later in the game. They did bank a lot of energy on the Sand Slash. I'm expecting them to overfarm a little bit here. So I'm going to farm up to a Dragon Claw plus a Close Combat, as Como-O will win Charge Attack priority. I go for the bait, I get the shield, and this is going to be close. I don't know if I survive this. I do have a high rank Como-O. I live it on 1 HP. This is a rare team where I actually have good IVs for all 3 Mons, and it pays off. I live it on 1 HP. In the back is Azumarill, and I'm going to be sending in Skarmory. Skarmory is going to be launching a charge attack at the Azumarill. It's the Sky Attack. Azumarill is going to let that through. Azumarill, Ice Beam not going to be able to knock out here. They need the Hydro. They go for the Hydro, but now with a shield and a 1 HP Como-O, I can just win the game with Haxorus. So I bring in the Haxorus. Opponent sees the writing on the wall and concedes the match. We've got the dream lead in the next match, Skarmory versus Wigglytuff. Typically, if you see Wigglytuff lead, it's going to be Wigglytuff double counter. In this instance, I was very slow on the switch because it was my first time seeing the team. They send in Lucario, they Thunder Punch me, I go for the farm down, but they live on 1 HP and it's a simul KO. So this will be a 50-50 guessing game. Since they lost lead, I'm expecting them to bring in the third, so I bring in the Como-O and I get the read right, and that just wins me the game on the spot. I am going to be baiting here with the Dragon Claw. Potential lose con from me, but I'm fully anticipating that they needed to keep the Escavalier alive, and that's why they ended up shielding. So I will shield myself as they go for the Drill Run. I notice the switch clock is still not quite yet up, so I'm going to go for the Close Combat and then switch. And now, Skarmory is just strictly winning for me. They're going to be firing off their energy. Shielding an Acid Spray would be rough here. A shield, and it is the Acid Spray. Oh my. My defense is debuffed, so I may as well Brave Bird. Brave Bird will guarantee the knockout. They can bring in the Wigglytuff. Charm actually adding up a lot on the Skarmory, but it's not going to be enough. I'm going to make another Brave Bird. So that's a team to watch out for. If you see the Lucario safe switch, you can bring in the Haxorus a lot sooner than I did, and it will just be a lot cleaner of a game. But even with less than ideal gameplay, it still ends in a win. Tough lead in the next match. Safe switch into the Como-O. Out comes Wigglytuff. And unfortunately, I'm just not able to make the Close Combat. We're off to a nightmare lead and swap, but unlike what some people may tell you, losing lead and swap doesn't mean that you lose the game. What I'm going to try and do here is get them to 1 HP and then just stop tapping, but the Steel Wing goes through, and this is really bad now, because I'm switch locked. It's a Bastiodon. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to throw charge attacks to burn this switch clock. The good news for me, however, is they're completely core broken by Haxorus. I throw Brave Bird into a Sky Attack strictly just to burn clock, and now it's time for Haxorus to show how it can shine. In comes the Turtonator. Turtonator going to take consistent neutral damage from the counters, and I have a massive pacing advantage getting to my breaking swipes. They shield the first. I'm already at another Haxorus, just incredibly powerful. Turtonator will finally fire off a charge attack. And I see a guaranteed win con here for me. Double shielding, farming all the way down, and earthquaking the Bastiodon. Trainer thinking it's a good day to run some toxic Wigglytuff Bastiodon, but Haxorus is going to say no. In comes the Bastiodon. Haxorus has a monster attack stat. This is double super effective, and that's good night, Bastiodon. We pick up a positive lead in the next match, Skarmory versus Weezing. Just have to watch out for a potential overheat. They save switch into Azumarill, and this was a meta trend I was noticing a ton of. A lot of teams where their lead would be super weak to Skarm, and they would save switch into Azumarill. But Azumarill is still not an amazing matchup into the Skarmory as the Azumarill player. Even if they have Hydro Pump, I can survive it here. They have the Hydro Pump, that's fine. I can guaranteed win the zeros. Or if they shield, I'm just going to one shield farm them down with Como-O. They shield, so now it's Como-O time. I can bring in the Como-O and just look to fully farm them down. The one thing, however, is their switch clock will be coming up soon. And there it is. They're able to switch out and send in the Weezing. Unfortunately, my charge attacks are both going to be double resisted here, so I may as well go for the harder hitting Close Combat, and they actually commit the shield. Again, as a Poison Jab Como-O, if you farm up a ton of energy, people will tend to think that you have a nuke move like Boom Burst or Flamethrower even when you don't. I'm going to bring in the Skarmory. They showed Sludge, and a Sludge won't KO here. They have to overheat here. They go for the Sludge, and look at that. That's why you can't throw poison moves at steel types. That does nothing. They can't Fairy Wind down. I can knock out. In the back is Skarmory. And this is tricky, but Haxorus can win this. Especially if I get a debuff, I'm confident that I can get the win. Breaking Swipe is a 50-50 debuff, but I don't get the debuff, and that will complicate things just a little bit. I'm just going to look to farm up a ton of energy with the Haxorus. They try for the catch onto the Azumarill, but now I can just counter them all the way down, and I'm going for a little bit of my own bad manners here. I'm going for the Earthquake onto the Flying type. Earthquake plus the counters will be enough to secure the win. Hopping into the final match, we got the Dream lead Skarmory into Whimsicott. The Empoleon safe switch will immediately be hard punished with the counter Haxorus. I'm going to shield once, farm all the way down. The energy that I have here is not particularly useful against the Whimsicott, but the important thing to note is the switch timer. That mid game was so fast that even after I throw an Earthquake here, my opponent is still not going to be able to switch, and that is in my advantage. Even after this Earthquake lands, and they actually try and wait as much as they can, they're still locked for about 10 seconds. So I can bring in the Skarmory. It forces their hand. They're forced to throw all the energy that they got in a very inefficient manner. And in the back is Turtonator. So this game is just a win for me. I can bring in the Poison Jab Como-O and start spamming out these Dragon Claws. The Dragon Claw will be shielded by my opponent. A Dragon Claw does not KO from there, but if they have no shielding, then I can potentially commit to a farm down win con. It'll be the Dragon Pulse from my opponent. I make it to another Dragon Claw. Are they willing to double shield here? If they are, then I can win the game with a Brave Bird. They end up double shielding. And the nice thing about Turtonator is it can never hold two moves. Its charge moves are too expensive. So I can bring in the Skarmory, make it to the Brave Bird. Brave Bird is going to be able to KO. I didn't want to risk a Sky Attack not knocking out. I know a Brave Bird will. And then they can bring in the Whimsicott, but they're unable to make a move, and I can Steel Wing down and take the win. All in all, I think this is a terrific climbing team. Overall, I went quite positive while using it. Started, I think it was around the 2700s, and then ended up, I believe, averaging about a 3-2 per set. I think I did have 1-2-3 set, and then that was balanced out by a 4-1, but overall, averaged pretty consistent 3-2s, and I don't even feel like I was playing particularly well. So I think with more careful play, this team could definitely perform even better. And a big thank you, as I mentioned, to SS Thorn for creating the team, as the team is a tremendous amount of fun to play. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you, as always, to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.